What's up, party people? It's Cardi, and it is another episode of Behind the Picture. Thank you for checking in with me today. I appreciate you. Just making sure my microphone and everything is working well. Making sure you guys can hear me okay. All right. Hey, Hell Dog, thanks for checking in. I appreciate you. Appreciate you. Noticing today that my audio is only coming in on one channel. Let me just do a little switch here. Hang tight. Check. Check. That should be much better now. You guys hear me okay? Hey, Warbucks, thanks for the boost. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thank you. All right. My audio doesn't sound great today, unfortunately. I think with that... Goes back to one channel. Check. Yeah, that sounds much better. There we go. So, welcome to Behind the Picture. This is a podcast by a photographer for photographers. My name's Cardi, and this is episode 5, which is unbelievably crazy. I've been doing this for 5 weeks. Thank you so much to everybody who has checked in with me so regularly. Julie's watched every episode. We got my assistant in the house, Jason. Warbucks, who's watched every episode. We got Hell Dog. And here we are for another episode of Behind the Picture. So last week, you guys remember we talked about the rules. This week, we're going to talk about a little bit more of the rules. We're going to talk a little bit about, obviously, the work that you guys have submitted to me. We're going to do that in the second hour, like always. But the first hour, we're going to talk about rules and equipment. I've been getting a lot of questions this week about camera equipment. And again, it's like... my philosophy when it comes to camera equipment is cameras don't take pictures. People with good ideas and a camera take pictures. I swear to God, my camera has taken exactly 0 photographs without me. It literally just sits there. A camera is just a tool. It needs an operator in order to be something special. So I'm going to teach you guys a little bit about the gear that I use and why I use the gear that I use. Also, of course, as always, we are rocking on the Discord. If you guys would like to join the Discord to talk to me directly in the second hour, the Discord link is in chat. Discord is the place where all of our regular viewers hang out. Discord is a place where you can voice chat. My photo drop is there for the pictures that you guys share with me that I share on the podcast. You can talk to me directly live on show, which is amazing. And yeah, Discord has just become a community where you can drop your pictures for the show. People can make comments on them. You can get love from me before the week. And we can kind of hone the pictures that we show during the live show. Okay, so... to start things off, let's just talk just a little bit about Behind the Picture and how it has gone over the last 5 weeks. I wanted to touch just a little bit on that. First of all, this show initially, the idea was for it to be a weekly podcast that I filmed. I came up with ideas of like, hey, I'm going to do this, talking about how all the my first episode was like, why all the other photography podcasts are like review shows and gear review shows. And it's like, I don't want to talk about gear so much. I want to talk about photography. And there's no real podcasts on YouTube talking about photography. So that was like my first angle. it quickly switched after the first episode. I did a live episode, and I realized like doing a live show, the thing that just makes it so much better is like the instant feedback. Like you guys can send me a picture, I can talk about it live. It's not about, I mean, you guys can send me a question, I can talk about that question. I can answer stuff like back and forth right away. And it's almost like it's the closest that I can offer you guys to one-on-one training. Essentially, what I'm doing is one-on-one training for each of you, but it's in this live sort of group session. And right now I have, I don't know, I'd say 10 dedicated people who come every week who are actually benefiting from this process. I'm going to show you later on Julie, whose work has evolved over 5 weeks to a level of like she's on her way to being a photographer. So you guys seeing that will just like basically prove that that this system is working, which is pretty cool. So also cameras affect so back to gear. So I didn't want to do my podcast all about gear. Funny, we're talking about gear today, but I did want to talk about all the other stuff involved with photography, lighting, getting your subject comfortable, how to direct your subject, and all that stuff that we're going to get into on future episodes, as well as like the life of a photographer, what it's like, the ups and downs, and that kind of stuff. Like the stuff that's never talked about. Photography is often glamorized, but rarely talked about in like, it's not easy. It's like the photography, the act of photography is quite easy, depending on how far you want to take it. But the art of being a photographer is quite hard. So that's where I'm trying to help you guys all get. And thank you guys for tuning in. So this live show now has also evolved. So we do this live show every Sunday at 2, meaning me. We do this live show every weekend at 2 on Sundays. And what I've realized is like 2 hours for me is the sweet spot. Last weekend, I did my podcast for... I did my podcast last week for literally 4 hours and 45 minutes. Like it was way longer than I've ever done. It like takes a lot out of me, but at the same point, like I'm giving back. It's like it's affecting people. People are getting a lot out of it. So people are getting out of it, I give. After I film an episode, like meaning today's episode, you guys are watching it live. After this episode ends, it goes on Twitch and it lives there in what we call VOD or video on demand for 2 weeks. Then it disappears. Now I'm realizing that my past behind the picture episodes are getting an amazing amount of views on the VOD, meaning people aren't watching it live, but they're watching it after the fact. Now, obviously you can imagine I am making $0 from doing this podcast. So the small ways that you guys can contribute is number one, instead of just following me here on Twitch, subscribe. If you subscribe, it costs $5 a month. You get no commercials. And what it does for me, I get half of that money. So $2.50 for the month. Amazing. That is like your contribution back. Appreciate it. Now imagine after, I'm going to have at some point like an archive of 10, 15, 20, 30 of these behind the picture episodes that people are going to want to go back and watch. Twitch only holds them for 2 weeks. Then they have to go someplace. Now, the idea initially was to put them on YouTube. But the issue is like, it takes a long time to monetize YouTube, and also discovery on YouTube when it comes to photography podcasts. I'm going to get lost. Hell Dog, thanks for the sub. I appreciate you. See, it happens pretty quick. I appreciate you. So you imagine I need a place for these VODs to go after the 2 weeks is up, right? So Patreon, that's basically what I've decided. I've decided that I'm going to put my VODs on Patreon. I'm going to have a 3-tier system where it's $5 a month, $10 a month, $20 a month. For $5, you get access to all of my VODs forever. They're going to be there forever on Patreon. I'm working on the Patreon. The link is just about ready. It'll likely be ready to go by Monday. It'll be on my Discord. It'll be on my website. It'll be everywhere. Subscribe to the Patreon. You get access to my VODs at Tier 1 forever. Tier 2, $10 a month. Now you can imagine here with my Discord during my live show, talk to people, look at photos, do reviews, do all that stuff. Again, for free. I'm just doing it to do it. But as it starts to get larger, it's going to be a little bit harder for me to hit everybody in the Discord, react to every photo that you guys send me, give you critiques on every Instagram account, every website that you guys want me to look at. So we're going to create Patreon for the people who are really, really benefiting from this, benefiting so much so that it's worth $10 a month to them. So imagine at $10 a month, you get one-on-one session with me per month. Pretty helpful. And then again, the $20 session is one of those things where you're a super supporter. It's worth $20 a month to you, and you get access to me once a week. You get unlimited photo reviews and all of that stuff. So I'm setting up tiers for you in order to make it so, hey, you want to support? You watch my podcast. You want to support a little bit more? You follow me on Twitch and you watch my podcast. You want to support a little bit more? You subscribe to me on Twitch and you watch the podcast. You want to support more? You sub, as well as you jump on one of the tiers on Patreon. After that, you can jump on tier 2 or tier 3. That's kind of how I'm trying to work it. So there's a way for me to monetize, first of all, the video on demands and all this content that I'm doing that basically just disappears into the ether. I've gotten asked to, hey, where can I watch episode 1? Or how can I watch? It's like episode 1 and now it's gone. It's offline. And now, of course, it's on the Patreon. Episode 2, same thing. It's gone. Right now, all you can watch on the feed is episode 4, which is the one from last week, which is only going to be there for a few more days, and then it's going to just disappear. So that's the way that I'm going to handle my VODs. That's the way that I'm going to try to handle making this podcast better. The more I guess I get back from this podcast, the more I give in. Right now, I'm just dumping all of my everything into this podcast and getting back just, I guess, the satisfaction from my viewers. At some point, obviously, like all things, I have to figure out a way to monetize it. And for y'all, it's like a drop in the bucket as far as how much funds it would cost versus I'm hoping how much I'm giving back to you. So again, support, you don't have to do anything. You can just watch. And again, just watching also supports. But if you want to do a little bit more, that's how you do it. Okay. Wanted to get that out of the way. Let's get back to the gear. Last week, we touched a little bit on lighting, and let's talk a little bit about gear. Angelica, I know you're watching, and you asked me some questions about cameras. Like, should you buy the 6D or should you buy this other camera, which I actually don't remember what the other one was at this time. But let's just talk about cameras for beginners to emerging photographers. Everybody has to have something that they can shoot with, that they have access to all the time. That's like a given, right? We all have to have a camera, right? Some of us are striving to get that camera. Some of us have that camera already, right? In the beginning, it's like the price to entry. We need like anything. Just give me something that I can shoot with that's better than my iPhone. Preferably something that you can interchange lenses, interchangeable lens camera. Obviously, most people start with a cropped sensor, meaning an APS-C sensor. Going back to 35 millimeter film back in the day. The sensor size is essentially 35 millimeters. That's a full frame sensor, 35 millimeters across. It's essentially the same size as film was back in the day. An APS-C sensor is roughly 2/3 that size. So it's a little bit smaller than a full frame sensor. That cropped sensor means a 50 millimeter lens isn't really a 50 millimeter lens on that sensor. It has to be like 1 point something. It's usually like a 1.6 times magnification. So if you're using a APS-C sensor and you're using a 50 millimeter lens, it's not actually a 50, it's more like a 63 or like a 65. So it telephotos everything. If you're shooting with a 35 millimeter lens on your APS-C sensor, or a 40 millimeter lens, it's actually a 50 millimeter lens, how it reads. So APS-C sensors, when you're starting, it's a little bit weird because your lenses don't look like what your lenses are supposed to look like. Meaning a 50 doesn't look like a 50, an 85 doesn't look like an 85, a 24 to 70 isn't really a 24 to 70. Like, you have to do like mathematics between, like, with all your lenses as far as getting what your true focal length is. So APS-C sensors are like price to entry, meaning they're less than $1,000 for the bodies. They're relatively, we call them consumer level cameras, and they're quick to grow out of. Meaning, if you're shooting with an APS-C sensor, now you found my podcast, you've already kind of grown out of an APS-C sensor. Okay, so onto full frame. Full frame sensors and full frame camera bodies, or bodies that have full frame sensors, are a little bit more expensive than an APS-C sensor. Obviously, full frame sensors give you the exact focal length of the lenses that you're using. A 50 is a 50, an 85 is an 85, wide angle is wide angle. It's just, it is what it is. And then beyond that goes into the super expensive medium format digital, Hasselblad digital, which when I shot medium format film is 2.25 inches, or 6 centimeters by 6 centimeters, 6 by 6 or 2.25 square. So medium format digital cameras the sensors are 6 by 6 centimeters or 2.25 inches square. You can imagine that is literally 2.5 times the size of a standard digital camera sensor, and therefore the resolution, the quality. That's why digital Hasselblads cost $35,000, $40,000, $50,000 versus digital SLRs, which kind of top out around $9,000, $10,000. Okay, so that gives you like the APS-C full frame medium format sensor idea. And then as pros and emerging pros, like what's right for us. What's right for us, number one, is buy the most expensive camera body you can afford, but at the same point, buy the most expensive glass you can afford, because lenses last forever. Camera bodies are, as expensive as they're disposable. I had one Hasselblad, one medium format camera that I used from 1991 until 2004. Now, that was my main camera. I had a 35 millimeter, a Canon EOS 650, pre-digital. They were still called EOS. It was just EOS 650, EOS. What other ones were they? The 10S, the 6D. Like, I mean, not 6D. That's digital. But I had the 650, 630. It's so hard to remember. Like these old digital camera. I mean, these old film camera bodies. EOS film cameras. Let me just see if I can find a search here. Yeah, so this is it exactly. Here, let me just change screens here. So, oops, you're not supposed to see that quite yet. Okay, so this is a EOS film camera. Oops. This was my camera right here. So, this is EOS 620 and 650. So you can imagine, like, ergonomically and all that stuff, this is exactly what the EOS digital cameras ended up flipping into. They had digital screen on top. They were using USM or L series lenses. That's a digital camera, but basically, this is what the old EOS film cameras looked like. And they were dope. This was my camera. I used this camera alongside my Hasselblad. This is a 35 millimeter film camera. I used this alongside my Hasselblad for 10 years. And back then, it wasn't like you needed to change your film camera every 3 years. It was like I had a film camera, I had a bunch of lenses, and that was just my body. And this is just like how it was. So nowadays, back to digital cameras being disposable, I had a Hasselblad from 91 to 2004, and then from 2004 until now, 2021, I've had 15 digital bodies. Excuse me, 15 digital bodies, like 15, like 15. It's like every 3 years. It's like you're having to spend $2, $3, $4, $5,000 on a digital body. The lenses, on the other hand, they last forever. The same 85, the same, and literally my 85 millimeter lens, I've had it since 95, and I'm still using that same 85. Still works, still super tack sharp, still super quick focus. And funny enough, the camera bodies are also what drives the engine for the autofocus. I mean, newer lenses focus faster, but this 85, which is literally my oldest lens, is still pretty sick. So camera bodies nowadays, like, yes, we have to invest in them, but they change so quickly that it's almost like there's a time to buy a used body and a time to buy a new body. And that's when I think that's the situation where Angelica is in right now. She's not sure whether to buy a lower end new body or a higher end used body. And that's one of those things that is tricky because the sensors change, and that's why we change camera bodies, is because of the sensor. Now, another example, Julie just bought a used Canon 6D. That camera, for her, because she was shooting with a Rebel from, it seems like, older than 10 years ago, the 6D for her and her sensor is a huge upgrade. And also, it's like a $500 body. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't like used. It was relatively inexpensive. You can get a 6D relatively inexpensive, and it's still an amazing body. But a 6D has like a Digi 3 processor, Digi 4 processor, and right now my body has a Digi 10 processor. So just how far the processors have come, they change so quickly, literally every 2 years. So once you use a new camera, you can't use your old camera. For me, I used to shoot with the Canon 5D SR, which is a 50 megapixel Canon body. After I literally shot with the 6D, and then I was sponsored by Canon at that time, and the 5DSR had just come out. They let me use it. I used it for a week. After that, they wanted to take it away, and I was like, how can you give me a Ferrari and let me use it for a week and then take it away? Now I need a Ferrari. So soon after then, the 5DSR became my main camera. And I've been using the 5DSR because it was 50 megapixels. It was like a future-proof camera. I decided to get a camera that had such a high megapixel so I could use it longer. It lasted me for 5 years. But the video capabilities of that camera, I outgrew the video capabilities of that camera 3 years ago. So I've recently upgraded my camera to the Canon R5, which is a 45 megapixel still camera and an 8K raw video camera. I'm going to show you the R5 in a second. I'm sure you guys have seen it. It's all over YouTube. But what's more important, I'm going to talk to you about lenses and why and how the gear that you choose to select, or the gear that you choose to use, actually affects your style.